Hello, we are going to test some carburetors. 62468 is that number there. And we're on macro, so we're going to get down here pretty close if we can. And where is our number? 62474. Let's see if you can, I can't even see if I can read it on the screen. Anyway, that's the carburetor number. Now let's take a quick tour. We are in macro, so I'm going to leave you a lot of close-up stuff, and anything far away may be a little out of focus. Quick tour of the carburetors. Fully machined. All mating surfaces have been machined. We've got new throttle shafts, new throttle shaft bushings, new throttle shaft seals. We've got new butterflies. The bores of the carburetors have been made plumb and true to the throttle shafts, which they weren't before, even when the factory made these new. We've machined the idle mixture screw hole port. This is for the first barrel. The second barrel port has been blanked off, so do not touch these. There's nothing to be done here with the second barrel idle mixture screws. Do not touch them under any circumstances. We've got all new factory gaskets, which you can tell by the red color. We may be having to replace these gaskets. The factory just indicated they're no longer available, so this is going to be a gasket we've got to replace somehow in the future, perhaps with some black Viton. All the steel parts have been plated in original CAD plating. Let's see here. What else have we got here? That's a quick tour of the carburetors themselves. Let me put this in the camera tripod here. Let's go over mounting. Alright. Mounting the carburetors be sure to use the steel bushings and wave washers that act as limit stops for securing the carburetors to the intake manifold. What you want to do is install install both carburetors, and remember that the choke brackets, choke levers go to the center, to the inside. And install both carburetors. Leave them on there loose. Leave them on the car loose so you can move them around. Then come in with your air log. So that you're able to put your air log in place just like I did there. Just be able to slide the air log right in place. Then come back and secure the carburetors. And one of your best friends is going to be a set of 1/4-inch drive universal sockets. Those make your life a lot easier for getting underneath the carburetors and getting to all the hard to get to bits. And then once you've secured the carburetors, then you pull your air log off and you can do final tightening. While we're here, we're going to discuss the use of the synchrometer. If you don't have a synchrometer for adjusting your carburetors, get one. They're on Amazon and a lot of other places. And what you're going to use is the BK2-40, and you don't need any adapter. The rubber that comes with it is just perfect for doing the job. This rubber boot right here, you don't need anything else. So let's see what else. Mounting the carburetors. Always use 2 wrenches, 2 17s, when you're installing the fuel line to the fuel fitting. What you want to do is secure this one with the wrench, and then you tighten up here or loosen as need be. Otherwise, if you don't do that, if you do it just like this, you just unscrew like this, it's going to rip this fitting right out of the body of the carburetor. Another thing that's very, very important is fuel filtration. You have got to make sure your tank is clean with good fuel in it. If you see brown, what looks like brown sand in your fuel filter or your fuel, that's rust, and you need to get your tank cleaned. If you see anything like that in your fuel filter, replace a fuel filter, and I recommend using an auxiliary fuel filter after the factory filter. And the one I use is from AutoZone. It's an FF3330, I believe, and it's easy to plumb into the system. So put in an aftermarket fuel filter in addition to the factory. Well, let's see here, what else have we got? Tighten the carburetors in a crisscross fashion when you're using your 1/4" drive universal socket, so that you don't put any undue stress on them. We are going to test the carburetors and show you how they are fully adjusted. But if for any odd reason anybody comes along and screws with your carburetor and you don't know what to do or where to start, your universal settings are: screw this one in, disconnect your linkage, and then screw this in until it touches, and then screw it in 1.5 turns, and then the same thing for the idle mixture screw. Screw it down until it just touches. You don't need to snug it down or really crank on it. Just screw it down until it snugs, and then back it out 1.5 turns, and that's your basic initial setting. Anytime you're driving along and you come off the road and the car won't idle, it's the fault of the G55. It's only active on the first barrel of each carburetor, and all you have to do is unscrew it, like this. Real easy to unscrew. You can even use a nickel or a dime probably to do that, and you may be able to see it's a very minute hole right there, and that's what gets clogged up with grit. And if you don't have the ability to clean it out, or if it's jammed or stuck for some reason, and you don't have a hairbrush to poke through there, just get the idle mixture jet out of this side of the carburetor and swap them, because this side is non-functioning. It does not do anything. So but it's always there to fill a hole, and it's always a good idle jet to use. Now then, let's see. We got a cold engine. I've got the choke levers tied together because this one's a slave to the other one. It would just flop around, and this one's got the spring on it. This one would flop around while we are operating. And what we're going to do is get our water temperature up to operating temperature. It's the only time you can adjust these carburetors. One thing that we will point out is these idle mixture screw ports have been really well machined, and in the old days you would need to crank these things maybe a half or full turn back and forth as you get an adjustment, and you don't have to do that on these. These things are very sensitive, and what we're doing is we screw it in until the engine starts to stumble. We screw it out until the engine starts to stumble, and then we get the midpoint, and that's where the engine idles the best, and that's where the setting that we need to have. And you'll see me do that, but you will not need to do that at all because these are being fully adjusted. The only thing you're going to be responsible for is the throttle linkage, getting that adjusted properly, and the end result is that what you want is for the carburetor to be adjusted, synchronized, and working properly. And then you have this turnbuckle which you adjust, and then your goal is to adjust the turnbuckle to where you just take this and pop it on, and nothing changes in terms of the idle. The only other adjustments you can make if you so choose are these screws right here and jam nuts. These adjust the position of this lever up and down on the shaft, and that lever is going to meet your choke cable on the aluminum airlog, and so you can adjust these up and down to be perfectly in line with your choke cable. Be sure to check your choke cable before you put it on the carburetors. Lube it up and pull it back and forth, and make sure it's smooth working. You'll notice that these are smooth working, but when you attach the cable to the carburetors, it all of a sudden tightens up, and that's because you've got a cable pulling straight up, while these things are trying to describe an arc coming up like this. So the two of them are in binding against each other. That's why the choke is so hard to pull. But if you eliminate all friction as much as you can beforehand, it'll be as easy as it's ever going to be. Now then, let's see. Let's give this a let's give this a whirl. Switch on, choke. And we just back off on the choke as the engine starts to warm up and is going to operate and idle properly. You can use combination of choke and gas pedal as you're initially driving off. We've got about a 90-degree day right now, so we don't need much choke. But you can see how what the choke does. Actually, what it is doing is it's physically operating the throttle linkage. So as I move the choke, we're just actually moving the throttle lever, just pushing on the gas essentially. Alright, we're going to get this thing warmed up. It won't take us long in a day like this. For our water temperature to do its thing. Okay, thermostat just opened up. Now let's go back to, let's tune us some carburetors. First thing we're going to do is we're going to check, see how we're drawing on the second barrel of each carburetor, which is important that we don't draw very much, or absolutely none at all, because it idles on the first barrel only. Here's our red indicating line, so you can see it's about 2 or less. Oh, wrong one. 2 or less, which is great. Now what we're going to do is synchronize. We're going to check what we have in terms of our first barrel, and what we're going to do is disconnect. We're going to disconnect the linkage here. So each carburetor is running independently, so we don't have any linkage that is possibly impinging on our idle. Okay, so obviously I've already adjusted these carburetors, but we're going to double check it to see how we're doing. That's running 5 and change. That's running a little bit under 5, so that's real easy to take care of. What we're going to do is adjust our idle screw right here. It's hard to get everything in the picture at one time. And we're going to dial it down, just dial it in to where we get 5. And we're good there. Now we're going to adjust the idle mixture screws. And we're going to listen for the RPM drop or rise. Here, drop off. Idle gets rougher. Back it out. Smooth out. See the idle degrading and see the engine running rough? Alright, we just remember where our midpoint is. That's all we do. Yep, almost killed it there. Back it out. Starting to run rough again. These are very subtle measurements or increments, and it's easier for you to see this on your own engine. But right now, that engine has been adjusted properly. I've adjusted the linkage, make sure everything is snug down. Okay. Adjusted our linkage where it should just pop on there and we get no change in RPM. Now I've got an idle of about 700-800. That's about what factory says, or it could be up to 1,000. So if you don't have the equipment, but you want to make your idle adjustment higher, then you screw each idle screw in the exact same amount. They both on the same thread pitch, and so you just pick a increment and screw it in that amount. Come over here and screw that one in that amount, and then you'll be fully synchronized. I'm not going to do that because these carburetors are running at what the factory specifies as an acceptable RPM. Goes back to idle. These are nice and tight and great carburetors. Great pickup. I think you'll be very pleased with these carburetors. Thank you.